So, guys, I missed you last week. I had something come up that I could not be on with you. And I was going to have Rachel or Jill just sort of let me know what all did you all cover on your agenda, and what does your agenda look like for tonight?
We talked about some extra dates to put on the calendar and confirm those. So Tuesday, May 11th and Tuesday, May 25th, along with today and Thursday, 2 weeks from now. So the 20th, Thursday the 20th. And then I think that we were discussing that a group of us, a smaller committee, was meeting to discuss the late resignation kind of wording. So I think that's kind of where we left off. We didn't want to jump into another IBB topic without you there to help facilitate. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that, guys. I try not to miss too often. I had just different things going on, so I do apologize for that. So in terms of the language that you did work on, did you guys get a TA on that, or do you need to share or revisit any of that homework?
We'll need to present it to the team as a whole. And is everybody okay with us doing that at the beginning of the agenda? Mm-hmm. And then moving to the NEA-SM topic of work-life balance?
Yes, that's good.
Okay, so in our shared folder, Rachel? Which I think Rachel? You have access to, yeah.
I'm sorry. Can we just take a second maybe to recognize that it's Teacher Appreciation Week this week?
Absolutely.
Clearly, our teachers have done a tremendous job this school year, and just a huge thank you to you on our team and to all the teachers in the district. It would be inappropriate for us to forego recognizing the incredible work that all of you have done, all of us have done, including you this school year. So just thank you, and let's continue to move forward.
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Absolutely. Okay, if everyone wants to go to the negotiations team shared folder, I put a document in the 21-22 negotiations folder titled Revised Late Resignation P&A Language. And when you open that, you should see a document that's got black and blue text in it. The black is the language as it currently appears in our professional negotiated agreement. The blue would be new language or revised language. And so the way that our subcommittee worked was that I did a homework assignment of taking a shot at trying to capture what we had talked about as a team as a whole. The subcommittee reviewed that in advance of the meeting, and then we got together on Tuesday and talked back and forth on refinement of what I had done, with the goal of making sure that it not only encapsulated what the team had discussed as a TA, but also that it's clear, it's not overly lengthy, that it's readable and understandable to our professional employees and to our administrators. And so the way that this works, paragraphs 1 and 2 were really just some cleanup language, because I don't think that this has been revised in a really long time. I don't think Linda had any memory of it being revised. So just capitalization of the term professional employee and removal of the term teacher or teaching contract, because that's not inclusive to all of our professional employees. I put in a parenthetical to explain what the deadline is under the statute, because I don't want people to have to go pull the statute. I think it should really state in there, just so people don't have to go cross-reference. And then on paragraph 2, as you can see, we took out the old language regarding liquidated damages and added in a new paragraph 3, which sets forth three options for a late resignation that our professional employees would have if they found themselves needing to leave their position before the end of their contract year. So the first is liquidated damages. That would still be an option. However, the subcommittee thought that it would be appropriate to have a 10 contract days notice, so that no longer could you, submit a check for liquidated damages without giving any notice, but you would give what I think is a typical 2 weeks notice. if you needed to resign, to at least allow the district some amount of time to notify parents. Now, I don't know that we actually have any teachers that turn on a dime like that, but this at least sets a standard, for what is an absolute minimum we need to be able to address that classroom, let parents know, that sort of stuff. When we talked about the amount of liquidated damages, I looked at what some other nearby districts had for liquidated damages. We did kind of talk about a scale depending on how late in the year we were, but ultimately came to an agreement through discussion that it didn't make sense for us to have a scale, but rather to have some amount that we at least thought would deter people from choosing this option, and instead give suitable replacement, but also not be so high that it would just be completely impractical for anyone to be able to pay it. So, we kind of went back and forth, and that's where we ultimately landed as being comfortable. I will note this is not as high as some of the neighboring districts. And then the suitable replacement provision, we talked a little bit about, realistically, how long does it take to find a suitable replacement for a professional employee? And we talked about a typical professional employee. So not a hard to fill position, not a really easy to fill position, but just your general person. How long would human resources feel like we can probably do this? We can probably get someone in.
Including board and other stuff.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, that, you might explain that, where that 28 days came from, the process of posting and.
I'm going to let Dr. Schumacher do.
So, yeah, we did some moderately quick math, but just looked at the calendar and a kind of a situation that may come up now. And so if a resignation came in after a board meeting, like on a Tuesday, that would be the worst case scenario. So that's kind of where we worked off of. And then having to post for 5 days, that takes you into the next week. Having to paper screen, that takes a couple days. Having to schedule the interviews, that takes a couple days. That's round one. Some time to analyze the results. Again, round two, check references. You can see how it plays out into 2 to 3 weeks. And then in the scenario that we were looking at, it could take another week to get to the next board meeting. And so that's where we landed on about 25, 26 days around there. And so it just kind of made sense to go an equal 4 weeks. And so that's where we landed at 28 calendar days.
The language in subparagraph I and double I is just to explain, because I thought we would need to make sure it was clear that if you take this option and a suitable replacement is found, then your last day is the day before your suitable replacement starts. There's no guarantee if you take that option that you get to stay all the way out to the end of the 23 days. If we found a replacement person, now of course HR would always work to try and make that transition work for both parties as much as possible. But if we found someone that's like, I need to start right now, then you would be released from your contract as of the next contract day for the replacement. Alternatively, if the district's unable to secure a suitable replacement, then the professional employee would be released from their contract and permitted to resign without payment of liquidated damages as of the last contract day of the 28-day time period. So just making clear for people what that timeline is. And then in paragraph C, we included the exemptions that we had talked about as a team. So one being that, move of a spouse, and we decided that the mileage there, kind of thinking about where geographically other cities are in relation to Shawnee Mission and what might be practical and what may not be. We included a 75-mile radius from the district's boundaries. We decided it would be fair to provide, again, the 10 contract days notice. The second is a job promotion. And what we decided there, after some discussion and just some scenarios, I think, in real life that we faced, was that in that situation, we thought that the fairest approach was that you'd only be released from your contract as of your first contract day, right? So you can resign before the start of the first semester or before the start of the second semester, so that you're not cutting a semester in half. So there's a natural break, and that you need to provide 3 weeks notice of that. And That's what we decided there. And then the last is the mutual benefit exception, where the assistant superintendent would have the discretion to agree to release someone without payment of liquidated damages or necessarily even in the notice period.
And I think that we even discussed it previously that there are a lot of other reasons that someone might need to resign, but they might be covered under our leave provisions.
Right.
So just people, if you're watching or listening, it's not that we're leaving out those kind of exemptions, they're just covered under other types of leave.
If it is a medical or family reason, it is likely covered under statutory scheme and or additional protections under the negotiated agreement.
That's correct. So FMLA, of course, would be the first avenue, and then there's various types of leave that we could access as well.
This would really be for a scenario that is separate and apart from any personal medical condition or medical condition of an immediate family member. And if there's any questions for the subcommittee or any concerns about the language?
Can we move a couple commas and
Yeah.
change a couple wills? So in 3A, professional employee must provide a minimum of 10 days notice of resignation counted from the first contract day after the resignation notice is tendered and pay liquidated damages. Okay, so it's the very last sentence. Such sum must be submitted by personal check, get rid of the comma.
Okay.
Or assigned authorization for payroll deduction, get rid of the comma.
Okay,
On the date the resignation notice is tendered.
got it.
And then the second one, I just think the language should be for B, Roman numeral 1, if the district is able to secure a suitable replacement within the 28-day time period, then the professional employee's last day of employment would be the last contract day.
Yeah.
And the same thing in the next one, third line, would be.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was thinking about, it just popped in my head, under C1, we have 75 miles from the district boundaries, geez. Would it, that isn't a square, would it be easier just to do it from this building?
It's a pretty far distance. I'd probably be comfortable with that, and that's a good point, because we'd have to,
I mean, that would just,
Central location.
yeah.
Unless you want to go out and drive from different people's houses.
I'm just thinking how sometimes the boundaries all like, I'm like, I don't want to measure from which
Yeah.
point.
and our
I
central
don't
office,
anticipate us quibbling over a couple miles, but.
I know, but it just makes it more logical to me.
Right, I agree.
and our central office building is relatively
It's
central,
relatively central, yeah.
so, okay. So I would guess at this point, Stephanie, that if nobody has any more suggested revisions, we would actually need to vote on it.
Can we do one more thing? Just to
Yeah.
be consistent with the woods. See Roman numeral 2, second sentence, the professional employee would only be released
Yes.
from their contract, just for consistency.
Thank you.
That calm degree really helping us out.
It's that foreign language, I think, grammar and every language.
So any other final comments, questions, suggestions, concerns? I think you are at the point of seeing if you have consensus. And that would be a thumbs up if you feel good about this, sideways if you're okay with it, down if we still need to work it. And Jay doesn't have his camera. I'm assuming Jay's got thumbs up.
I thought I did.
I don't see Jay. I see his name. That's okay.
Hey, there we go.
All right, all right. Thank you, thank you.
It's May.
Good job, guys. So I know Lindsay and or Rachel has a list of what all is still open that you all were IBB.
We're done,
So
Mike.
you all know where you want to go on that list, or if someone can screen share that list and you decide how you spend your evening, and then perhaps start looking at your next couple of sessions where you need to go.
From previous ones, we had talked about after late resignation, doing NEA-2 work-life balance, and then with the switching back and forth, moving to SMSD 1 grievance.
Yeah. That is still out there. So work-life balance would be the next thing that you tackle and then move into grievance. And tonight you all are going till 5, is that correct? And I know that NEA initially brought forth the work-life balance in an issue statement. So if someone wants to share that, I don't think we've really done much other than just explain the problem statement. I don't think we've even framed or focused it. So
No,
if
we
someone
have
wants
not.
to share that and start talking about it, I'll go ahead and open a document in the background and start capturing what y'all are saying as
Yeah.
you work your way into interest.
Sounds good. So our issue statement number 2 is how do we address teacher burnout and create a better work-life balance? So, kind of the way it's written, currently we have, for lack of a better way to say it, too much work and not enough life. I don't know, maybe it's out of balance in a way. There's, a lot of layers to this. We all know, at least for secondary level, we're teaching 6 classes and not 5 like other districts. Loads of students. Some teachers might have, 30 to 40 kids in a class. Lots of preps, not enough plan time, days without plan time, time between classes for setup. It's different things that, like I said, it kind of affect different levels in our district. So I'm not sure, do you want me to go, how much detail we want to go into with the frame and focus? What's the second step after framing and focusing? Is that?
Rachel, thank you. Frame and focus usually is sort of describing the problem. And then if other folks weigh in with a lens that they see the problem from, like, and this, or what about that, but this, right? It may be just other lenses, right, are part of framing and focusing, really unpacking the problem. Remember spending a lot of time talking about the problem, as much as y'all are comfortable with. And then number 2 is interest. Why do we need to fix it?
Okay.
Why do we care? What is our interest in addressing this?
Sure.
And then we will brainstorm solutions. So anyone can help Jill with,
Yeah.
from their perspective.
I can take a little bit on the secondary workload, and this was brought up previously, and there is a bit of a plan in place for addressing it, but teaching, for secondary, teaching 6 classes has become kind of the norm when it used to be not so much, and that workload has taken a toll, and all the overtime that we put in is a systemic problem that's going to lead to burnout. And so that's one issue. I know for the elementary side, I'll let the other teachers, elementary teachers speak to this, but the classroom class size and then the specials teachers, especially this year where our specials elementary teachers were doing the in-person and remote at the same time, but also they teach 6 classes in a day as well. Because, essentially, an elementary specials teacher is teaching every student pretty much in the school building. So those are a couple parts to it. Oh, part-time employees, just kind of looking at different issues with their workload and, if are you a 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, what does that mean? How many classes can you teach? What's your schedule for part-time employees?
We heard a lot from our counselors as we were just gathering information from our bargaining unit, and their concern is that their workload is tremendous, and they have 4 counselors per building, whereas at one time they had as many as 6. I know that ESSER money is going to provide an additional counselor, but that is for real-life learning, so will not actually reduce the alpha requirements of counselors, and so that is an issue that they have asked us to bring to the table. They feel they spend so much time just on scheduling that they don't have the time to do the deeper dive work of their counseling duties.
And along those lines with the ESSER funds, I know we're, the elementary classroom number of students is, I know the kind of the range is being adjusted because I think ESSER funds are being used to add some more elementary teachers. We want that to be, a permanent thing. I think that we'll see a lot of benefits having less students in those elementary classes. Also, I know that there will be teachers that will be teaching 5 out of 7 next year at the secondary level, but not all. And if we continue with our block scheduling, you could now have, we used to have 1 day a week, 1 block day a week where you would teach all day long with just your 25-minute lunch. And now if we have, 4 days of block, 2 of those days could potentially be days where you have, only a 25-minute lunch break and the rest of the time you're in front of your kids. So just some things to think about that, will lead to teacher burnout. And we were just talking about late resignations and wanting to keep teachers in the classroom. So,
Jill, did you mention the SPED workload?
Oh, sorry, thank you so much. Yeah, SPED workload, at least from what I've heard at the middle high, sometimes you can have more preps. So maybe you're co-teaching with a math teacher and an English teacher and a social studies teacher, and you're teaching a life skills class, and you're co-teaching something else, right? So kind of the number of preps there can get kind of overwhelming. We have some language in our agreement that it's not for special ed teachers, but for everybody but them, that limits the number of preps you could teach. But also caseload, number of students on your caseload, because of, there's a lot of paperwork for IEPs and scheduling IEPs and keeping up with minutes and doing kind of check-ins with everybody on your caseload. And so the more students you have on your caseload, obviously the more paperwork you have to do, the more check-ins, and it just kind of grows exponentially. So
I think along with that,
Yeah.
just trying to problem solve ways, everybody's tight on plan time, but when, your caseload is large and you're needing to plan for all of those students and finding time to do IEPs, that means a lot of times I think IEPs are being written at home, just how to problem solve that piece of more time for that. But then actually for IEP meetings, usually the best time to have an IEP meeting would be when a gen ed teacher was on their plan. But, nobody wants to take anybody's plan away. And then otherwise, to make that happen, you're doing IEP meetings after school. And so just trying to problem solve around how do we better support and work as a team to kind of accomplish some of those things as well.
I think also the thing that pops up to me a lot is coming up with like a clear definition of what a supervision is.
Oh, right.
As we're moving into things, and we're going from 6 to 5, and a lot of people are going to be asked to take on a supervision. I think it's got to be clear in what that is.
Right. There's something else that popped in my head.
I'm going to go ahead and screen share, but guys, keep on talking and sharing what's coming up for you, or what questions you might want to ask of your colleagues here to seek clarity.
I know elementary specialists have talked about they like the little bit of time between classes to get prepared, but I know that comes with the scheduling issue with time throughout the day as well, from having one class leave, next class coming in.
And which teachers did you say?
Elementary specialists.
Oh, okay.
Music, art,
They were all polled recently, and there were some data shared, and I would just say, I don't think it's a consensus that they want to break between every single one, at least from the data that was shared with.
You cut out a little bit. I didn't hear that.
I just said I didn't think it was a consensus between specialists that they wanted to break between every class. There was just some, they were all pulled by Mr. Kevin Hansford recently, and he shared that data.
Okay.
That it was actually kind of split,
Interesting.
like
I would-
50/50.
I wonder what the urologist would say.
Oh, taking a break to the bathroom? Yeah. And this last year, was definitely a different year, right? So every year, you're going to have to plan lessons week to week, day to day, but involving Canvas and then also doing things remotely, of course, that adds another layer, right? So several teachers at this table even will spend their nights or their weekends just getting things ready on Canvas so that it's out there, it's ready, the link is live, right? So that when you open up your remote class on Monday morning, things are working and ready to go. And so this year, we did put in, and I'm sure, everyone at all levels of the district put in extra time to make sure their remote classes and Canvas was working properly.
Jill, I think I called you Rachel before. I'm sorry. I'm having
Okay,
a little bit
thank
of
you.
I'm having a little bit of a post-traumatic stress week. I tried to have a bit of a vacation last week. I ended up with a private sector over by St. Louis going on strike. So I'm just trying to recenter myself with you lovely people, because you're lovely to work with compared to what I worked with last week, I'll say. But can you tell me, Jill, the issue statement, how can we, how did you word, how can we on the issue statement form?
I said, how do we address teacher burnout and create a better work-life balance?
Okay, so I just wanted to put that out front, that is the issue statement. In terms of framing and focusing where it's coming from, I've just sort of made notes. It's you all's work, you know it best, but I think I made some bullet points that you may want to revisit or see if anybody has questions on or can weigh in from a different perspective. I think, Jill, you said secondary teaching 6 classes, which is not something that all districts do. Did I get that right, 6?
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of, different districts have different schedules, but the districts around us where kids have 7 classes in a day at the secondary level, several districts have their teachers generally teaching 5 classes out of 7. And our district is, for pretty much all secondary teachers, are teaching 6 classes out of 7, so it adds to the workload. And, yeah.
So there, instead of 2, I don't want to call it downtime. I know you do teacher work on that downtime. Instead of 2 hours without students in your room, you only have 1.
Right.
Okay. And then you talked something about the block schedule. You said something about block schedule and when lunches are scheduled, it's impacting how?
Yeah, so we started doing block schedule years ago, but we just do it 2 days a week. So you'd have, your 7 classes on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, and then on Wednesday, Thursday, you'd just have like odd classes one day, even classes the next. And what that does is there were several teachers that on one of those days, they taught all 4 classes that were scheduled that day without any break except for like a 25-minute lunch. And this year we went to 4 days of block scheduling instead of just 2. We're having 4 days. So now you would potentially have 2 days during the week where you taught 4 classes all day, 90-minute classes, and had your 25-minute lunch. So just, taking that into consideration, that's a long, we would call that as a joke, we'd call that a no pee day. Like, when do you go to the bathroom, right? You're in front of students for the whole day except for 25 minutes of lunch, so. Anyway,
So those
trying to
just sort
avoid
of
that, yeah.
knock it up on those days. It's kind of knocked up a level in terms of
Sure.
the lack of balance. Okay, 30 to 40 kids in class, and I know it's not all classes.
So,
You were just sort
yeah,
of
the 40 was
going-
more because I've heard a couple, I think, business teachers or whatnot. I think Linda can talk about that. There might even be some where they're scheduling so many kids, they don't even have room for them in the class. But
then after that, you said something like, there's a certain, I think you said it was, there's the.
ESSER funds?
What is the money called? ERRSA or?
ESSR.
Yeah,
ESSR money. You said that is going to go towards some relief in some ways, but
Right.
were you saying, can we make permanent progress there?
Yeah.
No time between for setup, is that a particular grade level, or is that particular type of teachers? Because further down, you talked about it in terms of no time between classes for elementary specialists. But when you just said, no time between for setup, what specifically were you talking about?
That was for the elementary specialists.
Okay. I have that further down then. And then you want to talk about plan time. I just put plan time ? It was sort of you all's own sort of dialogue, and I didn't quite understand what you were saying.
Yeah, I think just guaranteeing that it's your time and the amount of plan time that you get. I know, like Lindsay was saying earlier, special ed teachers need to have those IEP meetings, and they need the general ed teacher to be there, right? And so finding a way to do that without cutting into the general ed teacher's plan time. Yeah, so that's, brainstorm stuff for that. So just trying to keep it protected. Or maybe you're a special ed teacher and on your caseload, a student's having an issue, so during your plan, you're asked to go take care of it. Or during your lunch, you're asked to go take care of it. So how often does that happen, that you lose your lunch time to help a student, or you lose your plan time to help a student? Something like that. Of course, those things are going to happen, but how can we keep it from being a constant,
I think what's missing on that list, and I think it's the combination of the 30, 40 kids in the class, and then it says, can we make progress permanent? That last part of that sentence connected with the fact that there is ESSER money, that the district's plan is to add additional staff so that elementary's class average size can be smaller, and so that will be a relief for our elementary teachers, but we know also that money is temporary money.
Guys, I'm struggling for some reason. My mute is not at the top of my screen, it's at the bottom. So I caught that and I just put it, guys, I'm starting to place some things under possible solutions, not suggestions, just things that are coming up. You know how it goes when you get to solutions. Some of them are just piecemeal. Some of them won't make any sense, but I'm throwing them down there, okay? Can somebody talk a little bit about the counselors concerned with workload? What Linda said is, there were four counselors per building, in some cases used to be 6. And then counselors not doing deep dive work. I think you were saying that translates to an interest, but I didn't quite catch it, right? So I wanted you to revisit that piece about the counselors, Linda. What does it mean if counselors are not doing deep dive work? How is there an interest on why that needs to be fixed?
Because ultimately, as counselors, they'd like to be working more directly with students with issues other than scheduling classes, and such. And this ties directly to the fact that the strategic plan has addressed in the bond issue passed that our classroom teachers are moving from 6 sections to 5 over a period of time. And counselors at that same time, when we moved teachers from 5 to 6, that's the time period when counselors lost a position as well. And so I think a perfect example is the work that the counselors did this year, changing every high school student's schedule in the fall to adapt for potential hybrid learning, so that we had groups A and B of students. So that meant we had to do a lot, not me, collective we. The counselors had to do a lot of work to balance our groups so that we didn't have too many students on one day and not enough. And then they finished that work and we brought kids back in, and then almost on a dime, they're turning around and getting ready for enrollment and doing the whole thing for next year, which led them right into making sure seniors are prepared and are graduating and everything that goes into that. And in the mix, they're asked to write letters of recommendation. They run the testing program, the AP/IB testing program in schools. You fill in for assistance with state assessment. And so I think what they would like communicated is their workload grew substantially when they lost their equivalent of someone who would pick up that 6th hour.
So I'm just going to add here under framing and focusing is just the high school counselor issues, right? And there were a lot of them you just listed. And then I did sort of translate these under interest. I mean, I could wait and have you, ask you guys what your interest. What I'm hearing is retaining educators, avoid burnouts. You can retain educators, right? It's just the right thing to do, but it's about retaining educators. And then the counselor's role to work with students, not just admin type work, would be better outcome for students. And then high school outcomes impacted by counselors. I mean, post-high school work, counselors are responsible for. Is there an interest there?
I mean, I think we want our kids to be able to pursue whatever they want post-secondary, and if those things require testing or those things require reference letters, we want counselors-
Internships,
yeah, we want
helping
the
kids find
counselors
internships. Those
to
kind of
have
things.
the time to be able to do that for our kids, because that does provide good outcomes for them.
So I'm going to say an interest is post-high school students' outcomes be the best possible. And then I'm scrolling back up to framing and focusing again. And I think that this special ed, someone said no limit on the number of preps. Anyone want to explain that more for the?
Yeah, sure. Currently, we have language that says if you're teaching at the secondary level 4 or more preps, and that just means different classes. So, I can teach an Algebra 1, a Geometry, an Algebra 2, and a Calculus class or something like that. If you're teaching 4 or more preps, then you would only be required to have 5 classes out of 7. But then it says this does not apply to special ed teachers. So a special ed teacher could be, they co-teach, at the secondary level, and so we had this happen just last year. They had 5 different classes, so they co-taught an algebra class, they co-taught a history class, an English class, and a different math class, and they also had a study skills class. So it just seemed like, and I understand it's different, elementary level, you guys are teaching all those topics, right? This, though, is in addition to a special ed teachers need to have their caseload and their IEPs and their paperwork, and then also to co-teach with that many different people and that many different subjects.
Well, they're also going through in any class that they're in, for some of the kids, creating
modifying assignments
and numerous ones. It's not just like one modified. It's
Right.
one modified for this kid and a different modified for this kid.
And then I think sort of tying into that is more students on the caseload is more of everything, including paperwork. I think self-explanatory, sometimes the IEPs are written at home. I'm assuming that means on the teacher's own time.
Yeah.
And then IEP meetings after school. And I think that Lindsay was saying, sometimes, you don't want to take a teacher's plan time. And so you end up doing after school meetings. And then the last 2 things on the framing and focusing is, this idea of taking on a supervision. What does that mean? Is it going to further agitate this situation worse or better? And what can you do proactively around that to deal with it? And then this last issue under framing and focus, I think there was some, maybe some want it, some don't. Maybe there's been a survey done. Elementary specialists may want some time between classes.
Do we even call that
not
elementary
everybody has said
specials?
that, but
I think you want to call it elementary
Yeah.
specials, because elementary specialist, would that be like a reading or math specialist?
you're talking about gym, PE, and music,
Yeah.
right?
And
What did we
I,
used to call them?
I think for that issue, it is especially hard in those larger buildings where teachers teach 6 sections all day long. So they essentially, except for their plan, they don't even have the 5-minute passing period that classroom teachers do at the middle and high school level. And so they have multiple preps with no time in between to set up, much less any time to attend to their personal needs.
And I think Abby was saying, maybe you've heard some specials teachers want it, some don't. That may be drilling down to figure out, is it building based or is it schedule based or something like that. So guys, I want to tell you that I worked for an organization for many, many years, and I had the worst work-life balance. And I remember someone, we did sort of an unpacking of the issue here, and we realized as an organization, this is just anecdotal from my experience, we realized from an organization we could do a lot. We also realized that there was a culture in our organization that things like this, the IEP is written at home on the teacher's own time, IEP meetings after work because no one wants to take plan time. There was also a culture amongst the leadership in my organization and amongst the employees in the organization that we could only do so much. We had people in our organization that had to own their own work-life balance to some extent. So that's just sort of what the things that started bubbling up for me. And when I started shaking my head is like, teachers will do whatever it takes to get things done. And certainly an organization doesn't want to put teachers in that situation because they're going to do whatever it takes to get it done. But if you all decide to take some steps to try to remedy some of this, there are always going to be some teachers that they're just going to operate by doing more always, right? So this is a valiant effort. It's not going to be an easy effort. And just know that much of it is organizational and some of it is individual. That's my insight on it. So under interest, so what I've sort of captured here, and we can go back and frame and focus more, but I want you guys to now to just specifically think about your interests. Why does this matter? Right? Just why do you need to address this? Why does it matter? I got retention. I've got, better outcomes for students as it relates to counselors doing more than just sort of admin work. Best possible outcomes for graduating students who rely on counselors having enough time to, help set them up with the best possible scenario when they leave school. What are the other interests you have in solving this?
I think it's going to help students get better feedback. So if I had less students and some more, plan time, I'd be able to give them even more richer feedback sooner, after they take a test or a quiz or something like that. So I think it's going to help the students get not one-on-one, but like you said, a more individualized support.
And that equals hopefully better outcomes.
Right.
Other interest in this?
I mean, obviously the district cares deeply about the well-being of our staff, and we want our staff to have job satisfaction, to be healthy physically and mentally, and, to be able to do their job to the best of their ability without feeling like they don't have the time or resources to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just to add to that, I think I concur with everything on the interest, that we would want that as well. And seems kind of trite maybe, but just happier employees make better employees, right? And they're going to serve our kids better when they're happy.
I think something that has come out of the list is while jobs are not equal, we need to make them more equitable. If we've worked really hard for certain members of our secondary staff to have, a caseload that is made smaller because moving to 5 hours, we need to think about our support staff. In elementary schools, we need to think about how specials really function like an electives teacher in a middle or a high school. And when they go back to back all day long with multiple preps, it's really I think that's something we work for, that we look at similarities and how we've addressed them at one level and what can we do to find a solution at maybe a different job title, but still essentially same type of job.
So Linda, can you help me put that in the phrase of an interest, or are you raising possible idea for solution?
Well, I think having a more equitable workload across the district, not equal, but equitable, helps improve climate in a building. People don't see that one person's job is perceived, or work day is perceived to be a lighter load or easier. And that helps.
I'm just going to say equity to improve climate in buildings.
That's great.
Is that okay?
Yep, that works.
You can think of other interests and we can come back to them, you all. This seems like it's going to be a really comprehensive problem to work on. I think so many organizations and even individuals wish they knew the magic bullet for work-life balance. So I think that it's okay for you all to brainstorm broadly, right? Because when you're in really comprehensive, deep, complicated issues, and sometimes they really are complicated, the more you brainstorm, the more you'll think of, right? And the more options you have to either remove from the table or talk through and lead to other possible options. So I'm going to say that if there are any ideas under possible solutions, I think we should just brainstorm them like crazy. Don't be afraid to go out there, try not to censor yourself, and try not to judge whether or not the one idea you have is going to work or not. Just get it out there. And then we'll see what starts to sort of come together. And what's going to be really important when you guys start to pick solutions from your solution list, and it may not be tonight, maybe it's next time you're together, you're going to have to start narrowing things down by, are they feasible? Are they manageable? Are they affordable? Those, you might have some great ideas. You are going to have to test them against the criteria you all use. So, but let's get them out there before you do the test, if you will. So possible solutions. One thing related to just one area, and I think someone said a clear definition of what a supervision is, but I don't think that is the magic bullet for work-life balance. That's just one piece, correct?
Yeah, I think the thing with that is that we will start having supervisions if teachers in the secondary level are teaching 5 classes out of 7. So we want to clear definition of what a supervision is so it doesn't turn into an additional prep in a class that you're prepping for and teaching and giving a grade for.
So
this is just being a preventive measure before you guys go in that direction, correct?
Yeah, so just maybe some explanation or some clarification on, Dr. Gilhouse and Dr. Higgins and the secondary principals worked on a list along with, I kind of chimed in at the end, and then we worked with Ms. Seek. So we do have a list for this year that are some do's and don'ts, I think is how we framed it up. So it has been thought of, but
My
not that
understanding,
it can't be tweaked or looked at again.
well, my understanding was that it was supposed to be shared with the BLTs, and then as well as the staff, what the do's and don'ts were. There is no grading, there is no planning for that particular class. I'm also meeting with the secondary principals next Wednesday to make sure that we are consistent with the supervision use. Now, that is only secondary. Not to slight elementary, but I don't know what Pam and Kevin's plans are for working with the elementary principals, but I know I'm going to have all 12 principals with me next Wednesday, and we're going to go down and we're going to make sure that we're consistent with the utilization of those supervision times. And it will be shared with the staffs. And my hope is, hopefully by the end of this year, it'll share what it's going to look like next year as we kind of get into the schedules as well.
Under protect plan time, I think you did it as a question, Jill. You said, how do we protect plan time when you were, talking about the framing of the focusing up top, protecting plan time. And then that was interesting that then Lindsay sort of came in with the example of, teachers trying to not take away other teachers' plan time. So that's, protecting plan time, being individual teachers responsible for trying to not invade on other teachers' plan time. That's one thing. But your bigger question here is there something that you do that is just black and white and, district driven to protect plan time? I don't know, but I'm going to leave that on the solution list for y'all to talk about. Linda, you were talking something about the monies that are being used for something. You said, couldn't they be used for? But I didn't catch that.
I think I was referring to the ESSER money that has already been earmarked to reduce the elementary class average size of students. But that is temporary money.
And that's the $10 million question, right? I know our professional employees are very interested in what's going to happen with that. Our parents are very interested in what's going to happen for that. I'm a parent. I'm very interested, And I mean, ultimately, that's going to have to be planning that the board does and budgeting that the board does. I mean, I know one thing that we can do is share with the board that our professional employees have a very strong interest in keeping the class size at its reduced amount. And of course, the yin and yang on that is that it's expensive. It just, you know, it requires more teaching staff. So that's always the consideration, is how much can we afford? But I mean, I do know eventually there will have to be a plan for transition away from that money. I don't know the exact timeline on that.
Well, kind of like we talked last year, you know, we know that.
I didn't hear you, Lindsay, a little louder.
Sorry. Like we talked last year, we know that moving from 6 to 5 is very important to employees, very important to families, you know, and we want to help balance that of, if there's the trade-off that workload is lessening, you know, we're not going to be as upset, you know, we're not.
Right.
Gonna,
Right, and it is, I know it's a balance that lots of professionals make, right? Where if my workload is less, then I might be more acceptable, you know, this compensation might be more acceptable because it obviously does have an impact on our operating funds, which is where all of our salaries are paid. It's kind of a tough issue to talk about right now, just because we're at the very beginning of the class size reduction, and we don't know where state revenues are going to be at the time that those ESSER funds go away.
My point
there
was,
already-
is that in the short term, it is going to bring some relief for
Yeah,
elementary.
it will.
But the asterisk beside that is, it's just kicking the can down the road, you know, what we'll do. But, and is that impact going to be next year? Are we hiring some of that staff now? So,
Yeah, so we hired 22 new elementary teachers to reduce the class sizes at the elementaries. And yeah, I mean, I think the board was really public about the fact that they were very supportive of the efforts made to reduce class sizes and to add instructional coaches and math teachers and counselors. But they've been also very public, and we have too, through budgeting, that there is going to have to be a plan put into place to either pull it back or absorb it or budget for it or whatever. And so absolutely, we all have some challenging decisions to make and some planning to do over the next 3 years.
So you guys are just flagging that the ESSER money is earmarked to reduce class average sizes, 22 hired for next year. The board is sort of doing the budgeting and planning. What you guys are saying amongst yourself is, I think, wouldn't it be nice if that could be permanent? Am I hearing any? Are you
I
saying
think everyone
something else?
I
agrees
think we
that
would
it
all
would be
agree on that.
Right, it's like, right, so I don't know who, if someone put it on the possible solution list, I don't know who controls that, right? I mean, that's a big picture. But question for you, when you guys talk about moving from 6 to 5, that is something that's already in your strategic plan?
That is not ESSER funds, and so.
Yeah, that's separate.
The move from 6 to 5 is, the plan for that is to be long-term, and our hope
Yeah.
is that over next year and the following year that we'll have everybody at that 5. I don't want to overstep my boundaries saying
No, you're right on.
everybody, but
Yeah.
it's, well,
No, that's the
Okay.
plan. That's, I mean, I'll say again, publicly, I mean, that's been the commitment. And so,
so
That's
that's
what
what
we
we're
committed to do.
looking for in that, as well as the additional counselors. And the additional counselors were ESSER funds. The additional math teachers were ESSER funds. And the biggest plan that we're trying to, to keep in place is how do we continue to maintain that? And I think everybody knows that's a challenge.
Yeah. Okay, so under possible solutions, you guys are kind of mixing in ideas, which is okay. Hopes, wishes, like ESSER money stay, right? And what is already in the works. And the moving from 6 to 5 in the strategic plan is already in the works for the next few years.
It is,
But it's
and-
still on possible.
Yeah, it is, and it's going to be over a few years, and we know that, you know, it can't be everybody at once. And so that's, I think, where the equitable workload comes in. So there are going to be people in the buildings that are only teaching 5 out of 7 next year, and lots others that are still teaching 6. And so finding a way to ease that tension, but not that they're going to have tension between them, but you see your
To
colleagues.
value the difference in
Yes,
workload.
value the difference in workload. And so what is that value? Is that a semester stipend like they do in some districts when you're teaching 6 out of 7? And obviously, like you guys said, you're committed to getting everyone teaching 5 out of 7 over the next couple of years, but obviously, like we said, we can't have it happen at once. So,
I think it's also, as a teacher in a program that typically will stay at 6?
Sure, you want to grow your program, right? You want
You
to
know,
offer.
some of
6
us are
different
the singletons in the building, which we're asked to teach 6.
classes. Right,
Most of us are cool with it, but we also want to be valued at that
For your
extra
workload.
workload.
sure.
Are you talking about for next school year, potentially?
Yes,
Okay. And that would be a budget item that would
we
have
understand
to
that,
be
yes, we understand. it's
talked
budget
about
item.
with compensation.
Correct.
And I mean, it's,
We don't all comes out of the
so
same
we would
pot.
be moving about 50% of our teachers to 5 out of 7 next year. So the magnitude of any payment to half of our secondary staff would be very large, and that's something that we would have to consider. That would be very large.
But there's a
So
time and
guys,
place
don't-
to consider
I'm
that.
gonna say-
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to recommend that you not pause and just go deeply in, do we do it, do we not? What I'm doing is clarifying what we're putting on the list. We're putting on some things that are in the mix, putting on some new ideas on the list of solutions, putting some list of solutions on things we might not have control of, like extending ESSER money, right? Some solutions that are already in the mix. And I put value the difference in workload in the interim on the moving from 6 to 5, right? But you don't have to judge whether it stays on the list. I'm just confirming what's going on, okay? And then also remember, as we look at, possible solutions to address teacher burnout and create a better work-life balance, acknowledging the value may help a teacher in terms of feeling valued, but it's not the end game of the better work-life balance, right? It's the interim. It's the interim game. So your big picture here is balancing work-life. So go ahead.
I have a question, Mike. When the board hired additional SPED allocated money, we did that from last year's IBB session. Were those additional 11 positions, I think it's 11, secondary positions?
They're across the board.
Okay, so I'm just thinking this might be something to go back and reflect on, but in practice, how many of our secondary SPED teachers are teaching more than 4 preps? Maybe that has been alleviated, so that would be interesting information. Maybe it's just contract cleanup. Maybe that's already, that's language that's there, but in practice, it's not happening. Or if it is it a large scale or a small scale problem that, we would know what we're dealing with?
Well, in a couple years, sorry.
No,
Mike,
go ahead.
ahead. I was just going to say, a couple years ago, we did a little bit of contract cleanup with especially secondary SPED
wasn't it? Yeah.
last year about plan time that, kind of just explicitly excluded them, that might just be a simple solution of just cleaning up the language to make sure that it's not specifically excluding SPED from that number of preps.
I think those are good points to find out in reality what's actually happening in practice. So that was going to be one of my suggestions in particular for the SPED workload, is to, between now and our next meeting, work with Sherry Dumoulin and her team and find out, get some comparison of what our workload is compared to Latham, Blue Valley, and so on and so forth. How many teachers do we feel like, or get a feel for how many of those co-taught teachers are teaching 3 preps, 4 preps, or whatever, and have a report for this group to take a look at.
Yeah.
And I would say along the same lines and not switching because it's in the same lane, referring to block scheduling with teachers that don't have a plan or supervision. So again, we've worked with principals at the secondary levels as we come up on this 4x1 block year and ask them to specifically try to make sure that we don't have teachers teaching a full day. Now, again, I'm not guaranteeing that can't happen in an unusual case when you look at a master schedule at a high school, because there's some strange scenarios there. But we have addressed that, and they've been asked to be cognizant of it. So I guess I'd like to gather some information on how many teachers do we have that have those 2 days where they only get 25 minutes a day, and the case is why? What happened in the schedule to create this? I think a lot of the burnout, the challenges, the counselor issues, a lot of this has come on with the crazy past year of the pandemic. So I think I think it'd be ridiculous not to point that the pressures and the stress that have added this past year have greatly added to an awful lot of burnout frustrated teachers, frustrated educators. I can guarantee you that the principals
burnt out.
aren't too excited either. So it's been challenging for all across the board. So I think if we can gather some of that information, it can help us move forward with it.
So under the SPED issue with the number of preps, what is really happening currently, right? And then with the block scheduling, perhaps gather info, and then you're not saying, gather the info and say, oh, it's only a couple teachers, so no mind. You're saying gather the info and then try to work with the principals and ask if they sort of tune in and see what is it about the schedule for those particular teachers that's making them work a full day and try to get away from that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and then this is kind of, I don't know if it's in the weeds or not, but this year, at least for high school only, middle school didn't do this. We had a day where we taught first, second, third, fourth. The next day was 5, 6, 7, 8, right? But I think in the coming years, we're going to have days where it's odd, first, third, fifth, seventh.
That's correct. That's
Second,
correct.
right? And so like on the day that you teach first, third, fifth, and seventh, if none of those are your plan time,
correct.
and you're teaching first, third, fifth, and seventh, 95-minute class, right? So so looking at this year would be kind of weird because we did it, I mean, I guess you could still look at it, right?
It would still be the same, because
You're right, who taught first, second, third, and fourth all in one day?
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. So it would be applicable, just depends on the individual schedule of
Right.
that teacher. And so what I'd like to do is gather the amount of teachers that we have in those
Okay.
high school buildings that fall under your scenario.
Okay.
Well, then I think.
Is there any other information you all want? I'm going to scroll back up to the framing and the focusing that you talked about. Is there anything else you want to look at so that you can more target your solutions, right? Because blanket solutions for work-life balance for everyone are great, but your best solutions are going to be the ones that really target the folks that are suffering, if you will.
I had said under the secondary sped one, because that provision in the P&A just like expressly says this doesn't count for sped, like a simple solution to no limit on preps would be to just take it out. And even if it's not currently happening, it would be a simple contract language cleanup.
Does anyone know the history of why
There's
reads like
several
that?
spots in there that it just says like.
I have some people I can
Sorry.
contact and ask them.
Well, is the word prep clearly defined in the P&A? 'Cause, I mean, if you think about SPED though, like, 'cause they could be, how you define the word prep might be kind of somewhere that came from.
I think, but it's in the section specifically about secondary and the number of preps they're teaching. So in this situation, the idea would be you're not teaching, 6 different, or co-teaching 6 different classes.
I think we
So would
also,
it be change the contract language regarding the number of preps to include SPED, or is it other items that you would want to change to include SPED? Or I don't have your language in front of me. What exactly would you
I
change?
think
I'm
you would
looking
just
for it.
strike through where it says, I don't have it pulled up exactly.
I
but-
found it.
Okay.
It just says if a professional employee in the secondary schools is assigned to 4 or more different subject matter preparations, then that professional employee may be assigned to no more than 5 teaching periods daily without mutual agreement of the professional employee and the principal. Then it says, this provision shall not apply to special education teachers. So that's,
That's where I'm
Sentence,
saying
yeah.
just strike through that last sentence that Jill
it
read.
says, subject matter preparations and teaching periods for special education teachers will be established by the principal after consultation with teachers and consideration of students and teacher needs.
What is the article number on that?
12?
Okay, so I'm just
Yeah.
going to put, one
Article
suggestion, one
12.
possible solution, change the contract language to include SPED in the current article number 12.
Article 12, 4.
The guys, we're just doing ideas right now. I said, bring them on. You can critique them later. Other
Yeah.
ideas?
12B4.
So I'm still not
Hold on, Mike's trying to talk.
I'm trying to talk now.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Just not forceful enough. I just think we need to get some feedback from Sherry and her team on that workload piece. I could make some assumptions on why SPED was included there. I don't want to make anyone angry right now. So I think we need some feedback from Sherry.
And feedback exactly, is it still even happening now?
Yeah, yeah, maybe it's not much of an issue.
Yeah.
That's an easy cleanup through just practice. I don't know.
Well,
I mean, I think we could all make a guess as to why the language is there, but,
if we're spitballing solutions.
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
it's a solution.
And if it doesn't
Absolutely, yeah.
match our practice, then it doesn't make sense for it to be in there.
Right.
Didn't we remove something last year about sped?
Yeah, it was a different area.
We cleaned it, yeah. It
Yeah,
was
plan time.
Lindsay and, yeah.
Was something done around plan time last year?
There was another article or another section in Article 12 that was about plan time, and it was a similar, like,
It was,
this doesn't apply to sped, and so we had just struck through that part.
it was
Okay.
redundant, and it was just basically copying another section.
Okay. So it doesn't, so this idea of protect plan time, do you already have that in your current language?
I think in
It's
language,
not being
but,
enforced.
I know for myself, if a kid's in crisis, and I'm the one who's available to go help, then I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
go help, and, I think
Yeah.
we all know that teachers are gonna go and do and help kids when they need them. But then however long that takes, that's time that I have to take that work home and do it later.
Well, so that's, a reason I'm asking is because if we have the idea of protect plan time, it is important for us to know if you already have language in your contract with the intent of doing that, and why is it not working? Or is it working mostly,
I think
right? So
it's-
if there is current language to protect plan time at some point tonight or next time, we should review what the current language says.
I think it is, but I
Particularly
think
if you felt
it's,
like you wanted to extend it to sped last year, it means that it does mean something to folks.
I think it's also a cultural type thing, of like, it's in there, but when things happen, it gets put off, and there's not a culture of how do we try to help this person get that back, per se. Especially
Like
with
when you
Yeah.
take a vacation day and people email you and you just email them back anyway, and then you worked your entire vacation day and.
Yes. Yes, and that was kind of what I was saying.
Not that I
was
know
in
what
a
that's like.
position For many years that we had to say, finally, we had to say, hey, we're a bunch of workaholics. But the problem with that is then you're feeding into the culture for the people that come in behind you that aren't workaholics. And you know what I mean? So it really is
Are we
a culture
talking-
change. It's different.
For the sped
Different
plan
answer.
time, can we define what we're talking about? Is it for the sped teacher? Or maybe it's both. Is it for the sped teacher or for the gen ed teacher having to serve on the IB team, or both? I think it's probably both, right?
I think it's both, but
Yeah.
I think that, as one of the things I had kind of brainstormed, because, as someone who has to ask gen ed teachers to come and sit in an IEP meeting, like, doesn't feel good, because they're like, I have so much to do, and yes, them being at the IEP meeting is really important. But all the things they have to do during plan is important, so,
Yep.
culture-wise, that is difficult, but one thing I thought of is just, like Jay said, is there a way to provide that of like, can we make it up another time? Or, have someone help cover a class during a recess so that the gen ed teacher can participate? Is there a way to do that? Is it through coverage, not during someone's plan time?
It's always a problem, right? I'd be curious from the
I
principals.
was going
mean,
to say,
yeah.
at most elementary buildings that I've worked at, we don't do IEP meetings during plan time, and if we do have we make up the plan time back to them with coverage or something, or myself or someone.
Is that Abby? I didn't hear you very well. A little louder.
Yeah, I was just saying, I mean, I can't speak for every elementary building, but several of the elementary buildings I've worked at, we never do IEPs during plan time, and if we have to, because a parent says this is the only time I can come or whatever, then we do make up the plan time to the teacher.
So do you ever do them during the day and the teacher just has someone cover their class with students in it?
All the time.
Okay.
How about it? Yeah.
Same with secondary. The majority of ours are after school usually. It seems like they schedule a lot of them on Friday after school. But,
But we have contract time after school from like 2:40 to
right,
3:20.
to 3:20, but,
We have 40 minutes.
A little bit different.
Yeah, we have a few that occur during the day, but not very often that I'm aware of.
Well, and I know my experience as a secondary teacher has been when I attend as a gen ed teacher, I come into the meeting, I share my information, and then I leave. I don't
Right.
stay for the meeting, so.
And I think that's what happens too with elementary, right? It's not like they're there for a really long time.
No,
No,
they're
we're
there,
there the
they're,
whole
they're
time.
legally required to be there the whole time,
The entire, how long is the meeting
unless they
usually?
get excused by the parent.
Oh, right, so the parent could excuse them.
Could, excuse me, yeah, but that's like, that, you didn't get that signed.
Yeah, they
I've got
go
it.
as long as they
It's
need to.
needed, yeah.
Got it, okay.
I'm not hearing whoever's speaking, if it's,
We would reach out to Sherry, share these concerns and the identified problem areas. And if the team agrees, we could, at our longer meeting next Tuesday, have her present us. Because I know she mentioned to me several months ago, I think, doing a workload study, or that she had already done a study on it. So what I'm saying is, I think she should be able to prepare in the 2 days that we would be giving her.
And I was just taking a quick look at North's master schedule, just for this year alone, like, we have 6 special ed teachers that have 4 different preps. And I just know that, I was talking to the special ed department back in August, knowing that this was like, happening, because I don't know if it's because we had to have remote sections and non-remote, and in-person sections, if that's what happened this year. But I feel like this is one of the first years that at least 6 of our sped teachers are having 4 different preps. And I just don't want it to be, and 6 classes, and 6 out of 7 classes, yeah, so.
guys, who is Sherry?
The
Our special ed director.
education director.
Am I spelling it correctly?
Yes.
Okay. You all have some possible solutions. I would like to say that's probably not a complete list. And there's probably not going to be like a silver bullet or an immediate aha, but you've got some things that you could start taking some homework on so that you can follow back up more solidly on these ideas next time. The clear definition of what a supervision is and isn't, there is a do's and don't list. Someone had mentioned they are working on or part of a team that's working on that. You just want a report or to hear about it. I know this team probably doesn't want to bargain out the do's and don'ts list, but is there a need for that to come back here next time you're together?
I've seen it. I think it might just be nice for the group to see it.
Yes, we can bring it to the group next
Yeah,
time, and we can
yeah.
certainly share it.
Or just drop it in their folder.
Yeah, either way.
Was that Scott that said that?
That was me, Joe.
Joe, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm going to put this on a Joe homework list. You're going to bring it or drop it in the folder to answer questions next time?
And then are you gonna
Protect
also
plan time. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
bring information about teachers?
I'll bring information about the block schedule and
Yeah.
how many teachers are teaching full days. Not
Okay,
only,
so I'm
I'll
going to
get-
scroll down to block scheduling.
I'll try
Or
to
can I
gather.
just, instead of jumping around the list, can I just go down the list, guys? And Joe, you're going to come up later?
Okay,
Okay, protect plan time. What does the article currently say? It probably wouldn't be the worst thing in the world before we move on from this today is for everybody, if you know it in your head, fine, but I think people should read the article,
I think
right?
that,
So we should read the article.
Yeah.
We'll come back up on that. So maybe someone could be looking for the article number. And then Abby, I don't know if you were making a suggestion, or a possible solution, but I added it as could you allow a makeup plan time option if IEPs are done on plan time? I don't know if there's homework on that. I'm just leaving it on the list.
yeah, it would
The
need to
ESSER
be
money-
during this,
Go ahead.
it would need to be during the student contact day to make up the plan time, and it would have to be at least 20 continuous minutes based on our language. Because I have it's Article 12B3 for the plan time.
Okay, and we'll come right back to that. And then ESSER money earmarked to reduce class sizes, like 22 hired for next year. The board is, thrilled to be budgeting and planning for that, but where does it go after that money's gone? I think that's just going to sit here. I don't think there's homework on that. And then moving from 6 to 5 in the strategic plan for the next few years, the issue is raised like, do we want to do something like to value the difference in workload? While there are some staff that are still going to be teaching 6 and others are teaching 5. I don't know if you're there yet, and I don't know if that solves this problem, right? And then what is really happening, the SPED, the issues with the number of preps from Sherry, and then is there a workload study to look at from Sherry? Does someone want to get that information from Sherry as homework or invite her as homework?
Yeah, I've reached out to Sherry and I'll work with her on that. That's Mike.
Yeah, I recognize your voice.
I'm talking to
Okay, and then the next one, change the contract includes sped in the current language of Article 12B4. So I'm going to just cut and paste that, and I'm going to move it up when we read the article as one of your possible solutions in that article. Okay, and then I think we're back to Joe down here. That is block scheduling. This is a Joe homework. You're going to gather info.
I will, but if you could do me a favor, I'm not a big fan of making promises I can't keep, and down below it says, make sure that no teachers are teaching a full day. I'm going to do my best, and that is ultimately the plan, but I'll just tell you that right now, I can't guarantee a no right now, so.
Yeah, and so you'll know, Joe, on these ideas, they probably all look wonderful. I will correct that, and I thank you for being so forthright with that. On ideas, it's like, you all don't even have consensus that you're going to even do that. I think you have consensus that you're going to bring back info, and it was an idea you raised.
Our plan is to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's our goal.
Work with principals and goal that no teacher
That is correct. That no teacher goes without a plan or supervision.
And if you all end up putting this in a TA, you all will say what you mean and what you make a TA. So I'm putting the concept here as an idea. But Joe, I'm going to go ahead and say your homework is you're going to gather info. So you guys do know how many teachers are impacted by this, right? And then I just put culture changes hard. I don't know what those answers are, guys. So everyone knows what their homework is for next time. Shall we read Article 12 now together?
Can I just interject one thing? I have in my notes, and I know this came up at, I think it was our last session. I know through the strategic plan, there's ongoing planning and looking at potential late starts for elementary and middle school, which really does alleviate work-life balance because it does provide additional plan time for elementary teachers, and it does give middle school teachers collaborative time. And so just in the process of this, as we continue working this spring, just a timeline, is that going to continue on to next year, or are we still committed to that as a strategic plan? I think that helps us, as people have heard that that's a goal that administrators want and teachers want. Just where are we in that process? And that maybe is not good for right now, maybe.
I think it is. I think it's a fair question. So we did table it. I do think it's important for me to reconvene that team prior to the end of the school year. I'll stand by what I said last time. We didn't have the time to get it off the ground for next year. So let us reconvene the team. I don't think we'll be together before our next meeting, but we'll get a report from that subcommittee before we break for the school year. You're a part of that team.
So under the moving from 6 to 5 in the strategic plan, I just added status of plan. Mike, you're saying you're probably going to reconvene the team and then report back sometime in the future, not necessarily next meeting, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Somebody's mowing my grass. They just started. Got a little loud here. Guys, is there other information you all want to look at, or should we jump to reading the article now?
I have something that maybe another brainstorm.
Mm-hmm.
This probably was about 6 years ago or so when we first started changing it, but at least for the middle school level, I want to forget about, I sometimes call them the middle child, the middle school gets forgotten about, but there was a time where we would report at 8:05, that's our report time, and classes would start at 8:45. Students wouldn't even come into our classrooms until 8:35, so from 8:05 to 8:35, you kind of had that time to go to the bathroom, set up your classroom, make copies, things like that. And then some changes happened, I think maybe because unstructured time for middle school students sometimes is not the best. I'm not sure why, but what we ended up doing was the middle school students could now come into your classroom as early as 8:15. And there's a part of our agreement, Article 12, right at the beginning, that talks about during that, that time from 8:05 to 8:45, when you're not instructing, the principal can require the employee to place themselves in a designated area for the purpose of supervising the coming and going of students, right? So that's why we were, having to have those students in there, but that's kind of a brainstorm of some extra time that could alleviate some work-life balance when you're for a long time been used to coming in at 8:05 and having about 30 minutes to try to get everything set for the day. And I know, elementary's got something similar. And losing some of that time, I think, was a big shift and put some stress. So anyway, that's something to look at, like time before the students actually start their instruction. What does that time look like? And could that be used as additional planning time? Yeah. And not in place of your plan time, in addition, so. And same for elementary, because I think you guys didn't have students coming into your room till a certain time at one point.
Yeah, usually it was 8 o'clock, but this year was 7:50, which is the start of our contract time.
Right.
Okay, I added it up here under possible solutions that are coming up sort of around the current article,
Okay.
Article 12. So I added it here, like perhaps morning time before students start instruction. So again, these are just ideas. Doesn't mean you have consensus yet. And then Jill or anyone, you guys, you don't have to screen share, but if everyone doesn't have a copy of the agreement, does someone want to read it? Do you all feel like that article is worth taking a look at to see what stands out to you? That is maybe just language you guys have gotten lax about. I mean, the parties both have gotten lax about, in terms of educating your members on what they do have under plan time, or, principals or administration, or, there may be something that stands out if you read the article. Will it maybe? I don't know. I'm not looking. Is it a long article?
Article 12 is like the majority of everything. That might be a good one just for all of us to do a perusal on our own time, because
Read it while you fall asleep.
it's a lot.
Just kidding.
So that's a homework thing
Yeah.
that people should do with a highlighter or a pencil in hand. And if there are things there, you might say, oh, I didn't know we had this. Why aren't we doing this? Or something like that. It just may be worth.
That's
worth
why
looking.
I laughed when you asked what article it was, because 90% of it's going to be 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Where else do we want to go on this? You guys have 20 minutes. You put a lot out there in a short amount of time. You guys really did. Anything else you want to do about this? It comes back to you next time with some very specific info regarding block scheduling, regarding SPED. Everyone's going to read the article number, and then maybe you can come up with other solutions or start to decide on some of these solutions.
I think we're at a natural.
Yeah, I think we are at a natural
Pause.
breaking point. Stopping breaking, I should say.
I'm going to send this over to Jill and Rachel, the notes here, if they want to send out to everyone to remember what we did on this before you're together again. I'm going to stop screen sharing. What else did you all want to talk about or cover today, Jill, or do you want to talk
Maybe we
about
should look
next
at what's,
session?
not that this one's not done, but maybe look at the other things that are open.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll open
We're
it
gonna
back
meet
up.
all day on Tuesday.
Yes, it'll be.
You ready for us, Stephanie?
I had one cleanup item on the
So,
on the late resignation issue that we forgot about that I wanted us to revisit really quickly, which was an agreement to revisit or to review data after next year to see if this solution is driving people to, suitable replacement, and we're getting time to find replacements so that we have qualified people in classrooms.
Off my mic. All right. I don't think we have to include it on the agreement. I think we just know that we're going to revisit it.
We can add it as a discussion topic without having to have it in a TA. We probably can under our current process. So I'm comfortable with that. It's just
Mine too.
oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
When we can keep it in that spreadsheet of
Things that are
we
under
need
perma review.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Maintenance, is that what we're calling it?
Maintenance, yeah.
No, yeah.
So the remaining issues, we had SMSD 5, which was PLC, which, Michael had brought up about late starts. SMSD 3, staffing on high leave days. Continuing with NEA 2, work-life balance. SMSD 1, grievance. NEA 1 and SMSD 4, compensation. NEA 7 was talking about ESSER, and then NEA 6, individualized learning, which I think kind of tied in with class size.
Class size, yeah.
So that's what's.
what was number 5 again? I didn't hear when you said number 5.
SMSD 5 was about PLCs relating to late starts. And Michael, you said that that was kind of putting a pause on.
Oh, for middle and elementary?
Yes.
Yeah, let's reconvene the team and we can report. Here would be my suggestion. We'll report back whatever that team, whatever point we get to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and part of that was
And
tied into the assessment survey that went out to staff. So that was a discussion item, but maybe in the process, I don't know how long it takes to aggregate that data, but we might have some information on it. Okay. Yeah.
But is
Not
that a
pro-
different issue statement? Because it's professional development as opposed to PLC?
Well, that's that's NEA 5.
Oh, NEA 5. So
Yeah.
you were talking about SMSD
Oh,
5.
SMSD 5. Okay, sorry. Wait, they're too similar.
I know, they're very similar.
We're going to have to
Yeah.
start doing
Different
N
acronyms.
and D, or NEA and district rather than, y'all have Shawnee Mission ours.
So what do we want to set for our agenda then? It's a long day. I think we should plan to take like the last 10 minutes of every hour off, plus a noon 45-minute lunch or something. Or whatever a natural breaking point is.
Is Tuesday, can we have some reports back for the work-life balance on Tuesday?
So the three things are Sherry Dumoulin presenting the information that she has on special education teacher schedules. Dr. Gilhouse.
Definitely have the do's and don'ts for the supervision. Principal meeting not till Tuesday morning,
Okay.
Wednesday morning,
Oh, I see.
but I can bring that with the one after.
I think Sherry will have something for us on Tuesday.
And then
I'm kinda
what
committing
about-
for her, but
What about your subcommittee?
we won't be able to pull together before then.
So maybe we could just review work-life balance and then move on to another topic, do you think?
Lindsay is really quiet for me. I'm not sure why. That's not normal. Wait, what were you saying? I hear Lindsay loud and clear. It's a good thing.
I had
Lindsay.
said we could review NEA 2 work-life balance, get any reports, have any more discussion. I mean, I don't think we're gonna wrap it up on Tuesday and then move on to something else.
Yeah. And I don't
Grievance procedure.
anticipate
I'm
that.
worried about moving that grievance procedure out because you'll be taking it into a third contract year if you do.
To a third contract year.
Grievance.
Third contract cycle. This was an issue
Oh,
statement.
no,
wasn't
I
grievance-
mean, the district definitely has an interest in, the team getting to that issue this year. But I don't anticipate it's gonna take it won't take me a ton of time to explain to frame the issue.
Well, should we make that number 2 agenda item for Tuesday?
Yeah, but we might wanna tee up one more just in case we have the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which would be an
Oh, I think
NEA
we'll have time,
issue.
yeah. I think we have time.
So NEA issues that we have, compensation, ESSER, and individualized learning.
What about, you were saying NEA-Shawnee Mission 5 was professional development? So maybe Dan Grumman could just look at the data on those surveys?
Yeah, or we could do SMSDs that deals with,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, high absent day?
High absence
Yeah, what number is
days.
that?
High absent or staffing on high leave days was SMSD 3.
Okay.
Because we have. at
Guys,
least
if you do high leave days, think about if you need data for that.
Yeah.
I think we have,
We can get it, yep.
I
But
have
that
down
wouldn't-
that we closed NEA number 5, the professional development.
I think it was, we had talked about the survey, us reviewing that data, and then that going to Dr. Gonzer for
Yes.
use for next year.
That's right. Thank you for that, John. Yeah.
So maybe do a review if Dr. Grumman can compile in this amount of time, and then do SMSD 3, staffing on high leave days.
So I do know Dr. Grayman is out these next couple days for a graduation. I can touch base with him on Monday and see where he's at. I don't think we can promise anything with it.
The other days, just maybe
Yeah.
knows that they could just bring that back. There's not a high.
I like your idea.
priority time-wise.
Yeah, I like your idea of maybe starting to talk about high leave days.
I think that's fairly short too.
By
Again,
what-
just in terms of framing it, maybe not the discussion, but the frame of it would be short.
We had talked about that, like looking at our dates for when we were wanting to time things out. Looking at starting compensation beginning of May.
Would that require Russ?
I think we have to wait in the next week or so to see what the legislature is going to do as far as funding pre-K-12 schools. Right now, there is no allocation of money for pre-K-12 schools.
So Russ will do his budget presentation on May 17th at the board meeting. And we had talked about it being beneficial if everybody watches that.
Yeah.
He can then be available at our next meeting scheduled after that to answer questions. And he can share at that time, what funds are available for compensation increases. And then we can make a decision based on what he presents, whether we want to do the compensation discussion at that time or wait till a later date.
Yeah, I just was looking at dates that we had down here.
So the 17th, he would do a budget presentation at the board. Thursday, the 20th, we have a meeting, and then the following Tuesday, the 25th, we have the all day.
So if everyone could watch that budget presentation either live or watch it again on YouTube, that would be helpful.
Watch party.
And Tuesday, we're starting at 10, correct?
Yeah, so work-life balance, grievance process, possible review of professional development data, and then the issue of staffing on high leave days.
And then just logistics for lunch what are the parameters of eating lunch in this building? Or do we take time to leave the building? I don't know.
Well, as long as we comply with our safety protocol and we are spaced apart, we could eat together in any, I can try and reserve a space. We could turn off the videos and eat in here. We could go outside if it's nice. We could probably, usually there's enough space in the cafe that we could even move over.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
You know me, I like to eat and want to make sure I'm allowed to eat. So otherwise I'd go eat in my car.
For your meals.
I like to eat, yeah.
You're not the one I worry about not having food.
Yeah.
Linda said, I like to eat. Guys, I'm going to drop off. Is someone, Rachel and or Lindsay or Jill, I'm assuming, send over an agenda so I've got that. That is a big, long day, and I want to be able to have the agenda in front of me if I'm going to help you facilitate. I took notes, but send something if you can.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, folks, I'm going to leave you and have a nice evening.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Bye-bye.